my lovely little gemstones, it's Afira, and welcome back to Fluffuary, a month-long event dedicated to Sanderside ships of all kinds. This is Day 12, DLAMP. Title is Winding Strings, and the summary: Ernest has always been able to see the strings that connect soulmates, and he could always see that he didn't have any of his own. Most people can't see the strings that connect them to their soulmate. They can only see a small piece tied around their own finger, which seems to disappear into thin air a few inches down. Not until they come face to face with them, and suddenly a pool of loose string materializes on the ground, showing how each of its ends connect their hands. Ernest couldn't remember if there was a time where he couldn't see the strings. They were everywhere, wound around every corner. They weren't always red. In fact, the color depended completely on the person and the kind of relationship they would have together. Everyone had at least two, if not more, for romantic and platonic soulmates both. Except him. Ernest had been born without strings. He could see how colorful they made the worlds, and yet his fingers were bare. He had no soulmates, and it had caused him incredible stress during his elementary and high school years. So much so that he had at one point completely secluded himself and refused to let himself become close with anyone. It was easier that way, to not let himself fall in love at all, rather than having to be heartbroken over and over again. He had two people he could possibly call friends, and even that was a stretch. Remus was just as socially ostracized as he was, although at least his was self-imposed, and Otto was just as cynical as Ernest himself. The world had beaten against all of them, but at least Remus and Otto had each other. The string tying them together proved that. Ernest didn't go out much. It was a rare occasion for him to leave the house for something other than work and his weekly grocery trip. But Remus had received tickets to a musical performance his brother was the lead in, and Otto had suddenly been called into work, which meant he was now sitting in the middle of a crowded theater with Remus by his side, watching a performance of Beauty and the Beast and finding himself fascinated by two of the actors. The first was the man playing Belle's father, Patton Foster, Ernest read in the program. He looked like he was born to play his part. There was something about him that was so genuine, he could see it through the acting. And then there was Remus's brother, Roman Prince. Remus had shown him pictures of him, but nothing could have prepared him for how breathtaking he was. Even with the prosthetics, makeup, and bulky costume, he was absolutely gorgeous. His voice was heavenly as well, and he couldn't help but feel a little jealous at the more tender scenes with Belle. He would have believed they were together, if he couldn't see that their strings didn't intertwine at all. The performance flew by way too quick, and soon the lights came up in the house and Remus was tapping him on the shoulder with a questioning look on his face. "You good?" he asked, and Ernest had to think about his answer. "Can you introduce me to your brother?" was the only thing he could force out, and Remus reeled at the question before taking a closer look at Ernest's face. "Oh my god, you're blushing! Aw, does little Dee Dee have a crush on my brother? That's so cute!" Remus squealed far too loudly. The people still in the theater turned to look at them, and Ernest had to resist the urge to slap him. "Shut up! I just wanted to say he did a good job," he lied, crossing his arms. Remus snickered, pulling him up by the elbow and heading towards the door that separated the house from backstage. "Oh, wait, Remus, I didn't mean—" "Relax," Remus told him, pushing the door open without fear. "They all know me, it's chill." They only got 2 steps in before they were stopped by a figure wearing all black in the middle of the hall. He had piercing gray eyes and fluffy hair, with the tips of faded purple. The man crossed his arms, staring coolly at them. "Remus," he droned, and the latter grinned brightly at him. "Great show, Emo! Where's the star? My friend wanted to meet him." Ernest swallowed, hoping he wouldn't get kicked out. He really did want to meet Roman, but there was something about this man as well. Ernest could see 3 strings hanging from his hand. 1 light blue, 1 dark blue, and 1 brilliant red. He also had a yellow string hanging from the same hand, but Ernest lost sight of it as the man shoved his hands in his hoodie pocket. "Getting his costume off. Go ahead and find him, but don't touch anything." "Thanks, Virgie," Remus sung, brushing past him. Ernest met his eyes as they passed, and was stunned by how beautiful he was. Then Remus threw open the doors to the back lobby, and immediately dragged him towards 2 other men who were talking in the corner. One was wearing a black polo and dress pants, and the other Ernest recognized as Patton, the actor for Belle's father. He was out of costume but still had his stage makeup on, which Ernest thought looked rather endearing on him. They had a string connecting them, Ernest saw immediately. The end tied to Patton's finger was dark blue, which slowly lightened as it reached the other side. They also both had a purple string that led back through the door, which Ernest surmised belonged to the man they'd just run into. They each also had a red string, which led down the opposite hallway. "Remus, you actually came!" Patton exclaimed as they approached, and then he turned to Ernest. "Who's this?" "Ernest, my stand-in boyfriend for the night." Ernest smacked Remus's shoulder. "Don't give them the wrong idea, you creep." Remus just laughed. "It's nice to meet you, Ernest. I'm Logan," the man in the polo said, holding out his hand. Ernest shook it, returning the sentiment. "You're Remus's other roommate, correct?" Yes, for now, he told them casually. I haven't met my soulmate yet, so it's just easier. Patton nodded, and Ernest noticed his eyes flicker down to his hand. Self-conscious, he hid it behind his back. Could Patton see strings like he could? Is that why he looked so confused? He'd probably never met anyone without a string before. Where's Roman? Remus asked impatiently. Right here, never fear. A voice came from behind them, and Ernest spun around to come face to face with the prettiest man he'd ever seen. His cheeks were red and his hair was mussed from his costume, but it just served to enhance his appearance. Roman brushed right past him, swooping in to kiss both Patton and Logan on the cheek. It was then that Ernest realized the red string on their fingers belonged to this man. Fantastic opening! Pat, I was nearly in tears watching you and Valerie together. Wasn't he incredible? He asked, pointing the question mostly at Logan, but also at the other two. It was like he was born to play the part, Ernest commented, and Patton grinned at the praise. Aw, you all are too sweet. Hey, Ro, what do you say about grabbing Virgil and getting our butts over to Denny's now, before the sun rises tomorrow? Remus suggested, teasing. Roman rolled his eyes. As far as I know, Denny's is reserved for actual members of the cast and crew, not little parasites who attach themselves to the main actor to get some cheap food. Remus pouted, slinging an arm around Ernest's shoulders. Aw, come on, bro, for me and my friend who may or may not have a crush on... Ernest shoved him into the wall before he could finish that sentence, face burning. Roman laughed at him, clapping him on the shoulder. Ha! I like you. Put this creep in his place. Roman cheered, and then turned to the other two. What do you guys think? Should we let them come with us for this sacred tradition? It's Denny's, Roman, not a 5-star restaurant. Besides, it's not as if we make reservations. They're free to come and go as much as we are. Logan rolled his eyes, adjusting his glasses. Remus laughed. I knew you were my favorite for a reason, Lo. Come on, let's go! And for the third time today, Ernest found himself getting dragged by Remus. However, if it meant he could spend more time with these four, he was willing to bear it. Roman was just as amazing in person as he seemed on stage, but Ernest got to know the other three just as well over the course of the hours they spent in the small Denny's booth. They were all soulmates, as Ernest had guessed. Rowan and Patton were actors, and had been together since middle school. They met Virgil through their theater program in high school, and finally they found Logan when they all came to work for this theater. They were incredibly comfortable with each other, which he supposed he should have expected. Even so, he couldn't explain why his heart panged so deeply at every soft touch, tender look, and sweet word. He also couldn't understand why he felt like he might explode every time one of their knees accidentally brushed his under the table. Every inch of him was burning red, even down to his fingertips. It was so bad that after they got back to their apartment, Ernest hopped into the shower and stood under a freezing cold spray for 20 minutes to calm himself down. Remus just giggled at him when he came out from the bathroom with his teeth chattering. He couldn't even escape in his dreams. All through the night he dreamt of those four, and even if the scene shifted, one thing stayed the same. The color of their eyes, which wasn't their normal color, but instead the color of the strings around their fingers. Patton shined a beautiful blue, sparkling like the ocean, while Logan's deep blue resembled the night sky, twinkling with stars. Virgil's were deep pools of purple, rich and mysterious, and Roman's were like 2 rubies glittering in the sun. Ernest didn't get a wink of sleep, and he was incredibly thankful it was a weekend and he could sleep in the following morning. Which was what he was doing when Remus suddenly burst into his room, cell phone pressed against his ear. Yeah, I told you, he's right here. Just give me a second, he scolded. Then he held the phone away from his ear and looked at Ernest. Hey, my brother's on the line and he wants to talk to you. Wake up! Ernest didn't need to be told twice. Roman, what? Don't ask me, ask him. Remus thrust the phone into Ernest's hands and then sauntered out of the room. Ernest blinked, taking a moment for a deep breath before holding the phone to his ear. Hello? Hey, Ernest? Sorry, I asked Remus for your number so I could call you later, but I guess that means wake up my roommate to talk right now, in his language. Ernest shook his head. No, it's all right. I was just getting up. Why did you want my number? There was a nervous laugh from the other side of the line, and he thought he could hear soft whispers in the background. So, this might be a little forward, but we think you might be our final soulmate. What? Those words didn't make sense to him. He didn't have a soulmate. He never had. Was this some kind of cruel joke? Look, I know this sounds crazy, and Remus told me you don't have any soulmates, but, well, me, Verge, Pat, and Lo were talking last night, and we all realized we have a yellow string that we haven't found the match to yet. And Patton's kind of able to see other people's strings, and he noticed that yours look like they match. But I don't have any strings. I never have. Roman sighed, and then a different voice came onto the phone. Hi, Ernest. It's Patton. Patton, what? You can see strings, right? I saw you staring at our hands last night, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I promise you that you do have strings. I don't understand. He could hear Patton smile through the receiver. I thought I didn't have any strings either when I was a kid. I could see everyone else's, but I didn't have anything around my fingers. I thought I would be alone forever because I didn't have a soulmate. What are you... But then I met Roman, and suddenly a red string appeared around my finger, leading to him. And one more appeared every time I met a new soulmate. And just last night, a new string appeared. Yellow string? Yes. Ernest, can you do one little thing for me? Ernest cleared his throat. What's that? Look at your hands. His room was dark, so Ernest clambered across his bed to reach for his curtains and pull them apart, letting the morning light flood his room. Patton, Yes? Do you see anything? I have them. I have strings. Oh, God, I have strings! Ernest shouted, his breath hitching. The phone dropped into his lap as he stared in amazement at the 4 strings tied around his ring finger. 1 purple, 1 light blue, 1 dark blue, and 1 a lovely red. He could hear cheers through the phone, but he couldn't stop himself from sobbing in relief. Behind him, he could hear 2 pairs of footsteps as Remus and Otto came to his door, confused and concerned. I have soulmates. He heard his name through the phone, and he forced himself to grab it and hold it up to his ear again. Yes? Logan's calm voice came through. Would it be all right if we came by your apartment in half an hour? Yes, please! Please come! I can't believe I have soulmates! Then Virgil came through, his voice slow and deep. We'll be there as soon as we can. You don't have to be alone anymore. Ernest couldn't talk anymore after that, overcome by tears of joy and relief. He wasn't alone after all. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss the rest of this series. If you like my writing and you want to hear more, you can check out the other videos on my channel, or my AO3 link is in the description if you want to read them for yourself. See you next time!